one of the things I'm curious about is there was an interesting article put out by Consumer Reports, and they were comparing the reasoning behind what they call homeopathic medicines versus vaccines. And they said they aren't comparable because the homeopathic treatments are very often extremely dilute. So
they're diluted to the point of nothing existing.
Yes. That's what they remarked on. And they said, therefore, they can't really be that effective. But you're saying that some of these vaccines are far more dilute than they were many years ago.
Correct. Because they're more effective. They've been, you know, over the years, they've done more research, they've refined the process of making the vaccine and realized, you know, we don't need to have as much of the active ingredient as we once did. Yeah. So they're reducing that and realizing it's like, oh, we only need, you know, half of what we did 10 years ago to still get the same effect, to still get the same protection. One of the things that's interesting is that one of the things that the Robert Kennedy and Jenny McCarthy and so on keep talking about lately is we need to have studies of, you know, rates of autism between vaccinated and unvaccinated children. And this has never happened. They keep just ignoring the fact that it has. It was done in Sweden, and the results came out a couple of years ago. And it's not one of those things where the government decided, you're going to get vaccinated, you're not. It was like, however the parents chose. They just monitored 3,000 children. And if the parents chose to vaccinate their child, they went into the vaccinated group. If their parents chose not to vaccinate their child, they went into the unvaccinated group, and then just monitored them for about 5 years. And the rate of autism was the same. There was no statistical difference between the rates of autism. The rates of disease were 93% higher in the unvaccinated group. No?
I'm curious about the Wakefield study, if he's been shown now that he's faked the data, and this was 10 years ago. And if I remember, there was only 11 subjects in the study. And in science, they always talk about, okay, it has to be duplicated in order for it to be really valid. Have there been other studies, or what has happened?
People were working at trying to replicate his studies, and they kept failing. They kept not being able to reproduce his findings. And then that led to the 2004 release of information that he had, you know, taken money. It was, you know, he had a conflict of interest.
Consulting fee.
Right. In 2007, the General Medical Council, which is the governing body in the UK, has brought him up on misconduct charges. And his trial, like with, you know, I don't know if you really can call it a trial, but the hearing is ongoing. The findings have not been, a decision has not been made yet. But he is under investigation in the UK for these claims. And this was before the revelation that he actually faked the data in this study. So that faking of data, I'm sure, is now going to get added to the charges that he is being the hearing is about. But hopefully, you know, later this year, the council will have a decision. And you know, I don't know exactly how it works over there, but it would be sort of the idea of.
Does Jenny McCarthy and Kerry refer to that study then?
Not anymore. But here's the actual charges. He was being paid to conduct the study by solicitors representing parents who believed their children had been harmed by MMR and failed to disclose this. He ordered investigations without the requisite pediatric qualifications, acting dishonestly and irresponsibly in failing to disclose how patients were recruited for the study and that some were paid to take part in it, performing colonoscopies, colon biopsies, and lumbar punctures, otherwise known as spinal taps, on his research subjects without proper approval and contrary to the children's clinical interests, when these diagnostic tests were not indicated by the children's symptoms or medical history, conducting the study on a basis which was not approved by the hospital's ethics committee, purchasing blood samples for $5 apiece from children present at his son's birthday party.
And you have a problem with that?
And this is why he's up on charges, right? Yes, then this is the father of the modern anti-vaccination movement. It comes from this guy. And even though this has now been shown to be a complete and utter, fraud, they still believe. It does not change their belief system. They still believe that vaccines cause autism.
Well,
Even
it takes
all
the responsibility off of the parents' shoulders, either genetically or otherwise, that someone else causes my kid's problem.
Right. The other thing is, it is extraordinarily selfish to not get vaccinated, because now you're relying on everybody else being vaccinated in order to protect your child. And people go and say, well, it's only one child, it's only my child. Well, then there's this person that decides the same thing, and that person who decides the same thing, and that person, and then you drop down to 85% threshold, and then you start getting outbreaks. Because some people have asked, how do you know that these outbreaks are due to anti-vaccination beliefs? And here's just a sampling of some of the stuff from the CDC. In the 2004, there was one case of a secondary spread was identified in a California resident aged 19 years with a non-medical exemption for measles vaccination. And in the second outbreak, there was a student 19 years old with a non-medical exemption for measles vaccination. There's a special problem that California has. There are, I think pretty much all the states have various exemptions from vaccines, for religious reasons. And you have to be a member of a church that, is it Christian Science, that doesn't actually use medicine, stuff like that. You actually have to be a part of that, and you have to have waivers and all sorts of stuff, but then you can get in. California, though, has a thing called the personal belief exemption. And that's literally all it takes. You just have to personally believe that vaccines are bad, and you don't have to have your child be vaccinated. And then you send your child into the public school system with everybody else. Those exempt from vaccination are 22 to 224 times more likely to contract measles. Washington, in April of 2008, because of their parents' philosophical or religious beliefs, none of the 16 children had received measles-containing vaccine. Illinois, May of 2008, because of their parents' beliefs against vaccination, none of the 25 children had received measles-containing vaccine. And again, like I said earlier, these people tend to cluster. If you have a philosophical belief that vaccines are bad, chances are you're going to find people who share that theory with you. And then when a virus enters that community, the community really gets hit hard.